The lens that lives on top of my Fuji X-M5 is not a Fuji and costs less than $200. Any guesses? It's the 25mm 1.7 Air for Viltrox. I bought this camera to have something that's nice and small and portable for when I'm not wanting to bring around my main Nikon Z6III camera. And this lens pairs amazingly with that. Let's get into today my review of this 25 1.7 Air. Quick disclaimer before I get things moving is that I paid for this lens with my own money. Viltrox has no say at all with what is said in this video. And if you've watched my 28mm 4.5 review, you'll see that I reviewed that lens quite poorly. So keep that in mind. Let's move on with the review. The focal length of this lens comes in between the 35 and the 40 at 37.5 millimeters on full frame, which is a bit of an odd focal length, honestly, but most people will feel at home if you're used to those two focal lengths. Because this is a Viltrox Air unit, it has a body designed of plastic, but it has a metal housing unit for mounting it on your camera, so that is a major plus. Weighing only 170 grams, this is an ideal lens for a camera like the Fuji X-M5. At a weight of only 170 grams with this 1.7 aperture lens, it pairs really well with the Fuji X-M5. I think owners of the X-M5 will be particularly happy with the Viltrox Air series of lenses, and they've covered pretty well every focal length now at this point. Because of this being a budget pick, there is no aperture ring on it and also no weather sealing, which is a little unfortunate. I really wish we could see the days where weather sealing becomes a standard, considering how easy it is to weather seal a lens. This lens uses the STM autofocus, which has some issues I'm going to get into in a little bit here. But overall, for a static scene like this, it does quite all right. On the underside of this lens, there's the ability to update the firmware with a USB-C cable. I don't believe there's been any recent updates to this lens as of recent though. Looking at the design of this lens, this has a 9-bladed aperture. The optical design has 12 elements in 10 groups, which is slightly more complex than the 35mm version. 5 of these are exotic elements, including 1 ED extra low dispersion element, 2 high refractive index elements, and 2 aspherical elements as part of its design. Obviously, this lens is made of plastic, and a lot of people will look down on its build quality because of that. But I think for certain cameras and different use cases, you probably want to go and opt for a lens that is made of plastic. So this is a pretty impressive lens at 170 grams. Comparing it to some of the competitors like the Fuji X-F23 1.4 WR, it's 375 grams, over twice as heavy. The X-F33 1.4, 360 grams, and the Viltrox 27 1.2 Pro is 620 grams. All right, so this compact, lightweight lens, is it any good? And I'm here to say yes. Even in the corners at 1.7, it is remarkably sharp, and the colors have really nice look to them. I think just as good as any Fuji lens. I've actually found as well that the bokeh on this is really nice and provides a really nice, smooth autofocus background. And shooting it at 1.7, it really provides a great amount of blur if you get close enough to your subject, and the images just really pop. Some of the problems with this lens is that you can expect some vignetting, which can be usually cleared up in whatever editor you're using with typically just a few simple clicks. We're going to go into the profile corrections and see how much we can fix up with that. On Lightroom Classic now, with no lens corrections turned on, let's turn them on and see what that does. It brightens up the corners, pretty good amount. This is shot at f2.5. Actually kind of like the shot with no lens profile corrections turned on. Just the vignetting in the corners looks a little more natural and adds some more character to the scene. Go on to the next one now. This is with profile corrections turned on and then off. I'd be leaving it off for the most part, honestly, if you like vignetting in your photos, which I do. This lens has a minimum focus distance of 0.3 meters, and I shot whatever in the world this is at 0.3 meters. You can see the sharpness now in the image. This was shot at 1.7. You can tell kind of by the shallow depth of field in the shot here. Now, I really like the way that this lens rendered this image. This was shot at f3.2. But look at the blurry background in this image and the sharpness and the in focus areas. Okay, we have two images here now, one shot at 1.7 on the left hand side and one shot at 3.6 on the right. Obviously the one on the right is a little bit sharper, but it's not a major difference in sharpness between the two. Looking at these two now, 1.7 on the left and f11 on the right hand side, and you clearly see there's a lot more somewhat in focus on the f11 copy. Personally, because of the subject matter in this image, I much prefer the 1.7 shot. It just kind of blurs everything out in a really nice way. Both images look great. I think this lens renders colors really nicely. Okay, we have a shot here at 1.7 now, and I have the profile corrections turned on. Let's turn them off and let's see how the corners look. I was expecting there'd be a little more darkness in the corners, but it's honestly not bad at all. Don't really see much of a difference. So I think this lens is more than good enough to shoot at 1.7 into the sky and not have to worry too much about vignetting. If anyone says that you can't get blurry backgrounds on APS-C, show them this, because that is clearly not true. Let's now check to see what the profile corrections look like when they're turned on and off. Yeah, there's quite a bit of vignetting in the corners, but it totally cleans up. See much of anything after turning that profile correction on, and we can play with that even more to brighten up the corners just that little bit extra. And in my eyes, I don't see any vignetting at that point. One of the major downsides with this lens, and one of the only downsides with the overall image quality, is the flaring. It can be a little excessive at times, although nowhere near what you would get with a lot of vintage glass. So this is the Viltrox 25 1.7. Let's go over to the Fuji 23 that's on the X100 V6. So as you can see here, there is a lot more flare on this image compared to this Fuji X100 lens that's on the body already. One of my least favorite things about this lens too is its manual focusing. It has a really poor manual focus on it that has a pretty long throw, and it just feels awkward to use in practice compared to a lot of other lenses I've used before in the past. This is probably one of the worst in regards to manual focus. So the autofocus on this lens, it has some issues locking on to focus without doing some sort of pulsing back and forth. Let's try and give you some examples now. Lock. Okay, so here we go. Seemed pretty smooth that time. So actually it's looking pretty good in this test so far. Maybe a little bit slow to switch over, but it's not pulsing too much back and forth like I have experienced before in the past. So not super reliable autofocus, but it works pretty good for a third-party lens, especially at this price tag. All in all, not too bad. And keep in mind, we're on the Fuji system, which is probably one of the worst systems in regards to autofocus. Okay, so now I've switched over to the kit lens. Let's just see exactly how well a native Fuji lens does in comparison. And it's also having a bit of trouble switching focus. It seems like this Fuji lens is quite a bit faster, but not too big of a difference, honestly, between the two. In order to get a similar sort of exposure, I really had to crank the ISO in this shot because I'm shooting at 4.4 aperture on the 15-45 kit lens. So the Viltrox is a massive win in that aspect for a studio sort of environment. Fuji autofocus really sucks, I tell you what. Okay, let's get into who I think should buy this lens. I think anyone who has the 15-45 kit lens and is wanting something a little bit faster, a nice universal focal length that can be used for landscapes, architecture work, studio portraits, YouTube videos. I think this lens really excels in just so many different ways. It's not quite telephoto and it's not quite a wide angle. It's just something in between. And I think this is a really versatile lens in that sense. Okay, now for going into the people that I don't think that this will suit, anyone who needs weather sealing, obviously you should probably skip this. If you need an aperture ring on your lenses, this probably won't work for you. I just don't see a whole lot of other reasons not to pick this up. Maybe a little bit of the pulsing that you get with autofocus. In my opinion, it's really hard to not recommend the Air series of lenses. They're just so damn sharp and provide such nice colors at the price point that I think most people will find a spot in their bag for this lens. In my conclusion, I don't think that the Viltrox 25 1.7 Air is just a great cheap lens. I think it's the perfect companion for a lens like the 15-45 power zoom. The kit lens gives you versatility, stabilization, and a little bit better autofocus with a pretty decent wide end. On the other hand, the Viltrox 25 1.7 Air gives you speed, bokeh, excellent renderings, nice color, and overall really great creative flexibility. What's really incredible is that for around $1,300 US, you can get the two lenses and the X-M5. And I think that honestly could be just a complete setup for most people. For $190, this Viltrox lens is pretty sweet and creates a pretty interesting value proposition for most people. The autofocus is not perfect. The manual focus on it is really lacking, but it is a great shooter if you want something that has excellent rendering in color and overall sharpness. It's just a great lens for the price point. I really recommend anyone who is interested in this to go and pick it up and look into the Viltrox Air series of lenses if you want something that can compete with a lot higher end glass for a very affordable price. Okay, we've reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I have affiliate links for Amazon and B&H in the description below. Please come check that out. I'm going to post a news article as well for this lens. If you want to look at that, I will have that available in the description as well. Thank you. Please like and subscribe. It means the world to me. It really does. Anyways, thank you. Take care. Bye.